Hey guys, Tarkecat here, and today we are joined by Raiz, Nugiyen, and Octavian for episode number 36 of Baeclast. So what has everyone been up to? Raiz, what have you been up to?
Quite a bit of racing stuff since we just had the level 85 duo race. Let's just say I almost got second, you know? Got the accomplishment.
It's a generous way of putting it.
And yeah, although huge props to Havoc and Kammel because they clearly put in a ton of work into this. They practiced off stream and on different accounts and everything. And they really had it decked out. I mean, we really felt like we didn't stand a chance. And a vast majority of that race was, since I was playing with Dead and Doom, and we had like insane amounts of bad RNG. To the point where like I was on a 2-link in Act 3.5 while 2 people were checking vendors and stuff like that. Like trying to keep that shit together and just like not complain our brains out and trying to get Dead and Doom to just not tilt and rage quit. it was an interesting experience, but a really fun one. Honestly, dual races in PoE. Oof. Maybe a dual 1-month race. That'd be cool. I don't know.
That might be a bit long. I will admit, though, the duo race was a lot more interesting because of all the different strategies people had. So I'm hoping that we see more stuff like that.
We really got our ass kicked. There were so many people with so many different cool strategies. And that was just really fun because it's just very different to the usual racing. And all these different approaches that all seem to work depending on RNG, I suppose. Were just, yeah, really cool to watch. Because usually when you get to maps in these sort of races, that's kind of where everybody just goes, okay, no, they're just going to get XP. And that's all, okay, he has good map RNG, he wins. He has bad map RNG, he loses. Yeah. But no, a lot of thinking went into this one, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Right, why didn't you have good strategies? Did
no,
you?
we had a good strategy.
Okay.
We had a good strategy, but we also fucked up setting it up, or I suppose I did. So our strategy was to go top right and just clear up, just basically the tie strategy, if anybody knows it. It's to go top right primarily on the Atlas, I'm saying, and stick to that section of the map, controlling the Shaper influence so that you can get your Zana levels. And that way you could get the tier 9 shit maps on a 2 chaos investment every time you put in a map. And whenever we wouldn't be doing that, we would be doing probably city squares, or we would be shaping the city squares, either beach or city square. We didn't quite have that mapped out. We simply didn't, we didn't put in enough effort, unfortunately. And yeah, all of that went to shit because we completely fucked it up. So our shaper influence was like all over the place, and it was just a tragedy. And then we went with the, okay, let's just hope for the best and try and get the highest map possible. And then since we both would hopefully have high maps, we would just like come together towards the last minutes of the race and just run our best maps together and try and get just clear them out as fast as possible. Because Stormbright is just that strong. It does genuinely increase your clear speed if you're 2 people. But then Dead and Doom died, and then I died, and then that was the race.
Havoc and Kammel also made an interesting adaptation where they, instead of going Elementalist or Inquisitor with the Stormbrand, Havoc played a Trickster Stormbrand because you need better gear at that point in the game for Trickster to do enough damage to like clear reliably. But since you have 2 players, you can funnel better gear onto the Trickster, and then the Trickster also gets more EHP from, crazy mana scaling with Mind Over Matter and more defensiveness just because you take the reduced damage from the Mind Over Matter node on Trickster as well. It's much more reliable to not die, which was rule 1 of their strat.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think Ty's strategy, honestly, was the best. Tai was the person who took the second spot, and he was, I'm not sure what his partner was playing. I think he died in pretty early stages. And Tai ended up playing Elementalist with, I think it was just a 3-linked Herald of Ice. Obviously, he was looking to 4-link it because he had quite a bit of mana left over. But somehow his gear just was really good. He had like 5k HP without MOM, which was more than I had with MOM. So he just geared up really well. And with the Herald of Ice just chaining through, yeah, that was really fast.
But just to backtrack a little bit, when you said specifically that when normally with these races, the mapping bit's the most like boring bit and how that changed with the duo, that was one thing which I noticed a lot because I casted the first Kammel Race and it was really fun to cast until you guys got to like Act 9, Act 10, and then it was like, okay, I want to go to bed now. Whereas Octavian, you casted this one. Like, for you, what was like the boom bit for you? You know?
It got more interesting as people entered mapping, actually, because that's where strategies diverged. We saw Zizaran and Embu were doing one of the more interesting strats. Zizaran was like just blitzing through maps to try and hit the highest tier maps. So he wasn't doing the, sticking to a specific corner. That did end up biting him in the ass because he ended up ripping in a high tier map to some syndicates. By high tier, I mean like tier 8 or something, but that's, high tier for one of these races. But Embu, in the meanwhile, was left behind in delving and was pushing down to like 60 plus delves so he could start targeting jewelry nodes, doing the chaos recipe, giving the chaos to Ziz, and having him use Zana, map device mods. So like domination or shaping maps or something. Which other people were doing the chaos recipe out of drops from maps, but this was like supposedly a way to generate even more chaos.
Yeah, that was a really fun part, honestly, because that's kind of where I feel a lot of the, especially NA racers that've been racing for just a really long time, like your Hellmans, Gorathas, and Waggles, they just generally would get to mapping and they'd just be like, I don't care anymore. And that's kind of what would happen a lot to me too, where it's just kind of the same grind as always. But with this race, yeah, it was very interesting.
Since we're on the whole race topic, since we have 2 professional racers in the chat, what do you think's the sweet spot when it comes to frequency? Because too many races too close together, the races burn out, it's less interesting for the viewer. What would you say is like the right amount per league?
It really depends on the length of the race, I think.
Yeah.
Like something even every weekend, I think would work as long as it's very short. It's like a 1 hour event on Saturday, 1 hour event on Sunday, and then it's done. And maybe throw in some rewards and all this sort of stuff. But like if it's this like big 85 thing, I think once a month that works. The problem is that nobody will get into it right now, because like how can you have to get into like the 85 race, you have to have prior experience, or you have to put in a lot of really unrewarding work to practice. And yeah, I feel like
every
there's
other game that is competitive.
Yeah, or just do something else.
I don't understand this. Like everyone needs, like, for anyone to get into it, you have to go through work. I mean, yes. Sorry, that's how things work in life.
To be fair, though, in a lot of other scenes, because the Path of Exile racing scene is relatively small, like if we're talking other competitive gaming scenes, you have a lot of different tournament circuits you could compete at. You get to compete against other high-level players more frequently.
There are more tiers, right, that you can progress through.
Yeah, there's like an amateur and a pro.
There's no tier here.
No,
I mean, even if you play online, like if you're playing Overwatch, right? Like I don't think any pro in any video game really starts off with, hey, I'm gonna be a pro at this, when they've never played the game and they're a total noob. They just kind of play, and then eventually they're like, oh, okay, I'm pretty good. I'm gonna try it and get there. Nobody starts off with, wow, this really sucks. Hopefully I'll get good one day.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's kind of,
it's kind of thing though is it's also, I think these longer races, less frequent, if you're like a streamer who's like, oh, I want to try and get known, for those kinds of people it's a lot better, right? Because then it's like, oh, I'll practice, I'll get good at the racing, it's a small thing. Because it's one of those things of, if you're watching like a 1 hour event, you're more likely to just watch someone like Ziz or someone like Raiz. And like the shorter the race, the less likely you are to rip, the less likely you are to watch all these different people. Whereas I'm sure there are a lot of people who would be far more likely to get discovered over like a 10-hour race, you know? I mean, even just someone like Ty, who's like a really fucking good racer, if you asked like 3 months ago the average dude, oh, who's Ty? They'd be like, I don't fucking know. Whereas now, because of this, you're like, oh shit, yeah, that's that guy who's like really good at the thing. So, I don't know.
I also think that in terms of like the 1 hour, if it's just a 1 hour race in a weekend, that's kind of like, I don't know. That seems like very little.
Yeah, it's little. It leaves you hungry.
No, but as an event, I don't know, just 1 hour, you make one mistake within the first 2 minutes, it's like, oh, I just forget about it. I'm coming.
It also,
then you try on Sunday.
It really limits you.
And then you're hungry and you want more.
It limits you in terms of what the goal of the race can be, though, right?
Yeah.
Like the race every time would be, something in the early acts, and that's it, which I think would also hurt audience retention.
I think the longer I think you either have to have like a set of races going on, right? It's like we have like a little, maybe like a little King of the Hill or something like where there's a bit of a progression throughout the short races that people can follow throughout like the same length of a day.
I really like
Or-
the 24-hour Malachi blamps and stuff like that. That was really cool.
Yes. Or that type of style where we have like a race towards a certain goal. I think that's like the best way to do it.
I think also, I feel like the 1 hour races are only things that GGG should organize, because I don't think a 1 hour race is worth organizing. Like, if you think about the amount of work which goes into just trying to get 4 people to commit to, oh, we're doing Baeclast on this day. Yeah, we're definitely doing Baeclast on this day. Okay. Doing all of that work to organize a 1 hour race doesn't seem like it'd be worthwhile to me. That seems like you'd be doing way too much work for too little kind of thing. Whereas having like doing that much work once a month for a big thing, which is like a whole day, that's like an event, people can build towards it, it seems good.
No. I'm talking strictly if this was organized by GGG, just to introduce like all the new players to racing. Because realistically, I mean, back when racing was completely taken away, I mean, the game had like 10,000 average players, on Steam. So now it's like 20,000. So that was like 20,000. Even now, there's like 60. I think there's like 50,000 players right now, and like the second 50,000 players just on Steam. So that's like 100th. That's 10 times more. It's a lot of people, and a lot of the old schoolers also quit. It's a lot of people that just don't know anything about it, but some are looking to get into it, and they just will. Unless there's a little bit of support from GG, there's really going to be very little opportunity to do so. So if you participate in a big event, it's like, oh, I don't want to, be lame. I don't want to lose. I don't want everybody to see that I suck, right? So you have to have that like level of, I'm already pretty decent and I won't absolutely embarrass myself if I partake in something like this when like 10,000 people are watching me being casted by Ziggy D, right? Because that's like a pretty big discouragement, I think.